Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. We are just going to jump right into the Altenew Stamp Wheel. There's lots of details that I'm going to give you about the video hop, but that's going to take a second. So here, this is just me doing my unboxing. It comes with a, what are they calling it? A stage, a flip plate, and then a sticky mat. So here you can see we're kind of like zoomed out a little farther on my desk than we normally would be because I had to in order for you to be able to see everything. So don't mind my camera stand that kind of goes around my glass mat. But anywho, so when you get the product and you open it, there is a clear protective film that is over the flip portion of it, so you need to peel that off so that it is clear, and then it just fits right down into the stage. The sticky mat grid, this is actually really very cool. It's photopolymer. It is the exact same material as a stamp. So here's me reading the instructions, just to make sure I don't do anything I shouldn't. So I'm peeling off the back, and there is a side that is textured like a grid. And then there is a flat side. So you want to put the textured side down into your stage. And then you are going to remove this top portion to reveal the flat sticky mat. But the reason that I did mine inside the stage was just to make sure that I didn't pull it too hard or warp it in any way and that it would still fit perfectly. So I just held it with one hand, I pulled it off with the other, and it worked perfect. I had no issues. And it was just like your stamps are sticky when you first get them. It's sticky and it's actually really great. So here, like now that everything is all set up, we're going to move into actually using it. I pulled out the nostalgic florals, stamps, dies, and stencils. I also pulled out the pinstripe, but I didn't end up using it. And then I'm just going to take my cardstock, I'm going to stick it down. I had no issues with it sticking whatsoever. It stayed exactly in its place. And then I'm going to lay out my stamps, pick them up with the flip platform here, and then stamp them down. And I'm going to be honest, this works exactly as it is intended. So I was pretty impressed with it. Now, several people I know have already done videos reviewing them. These are just some things that I have kind of picked up and noticed that I'm going to share with you. So the first thing that I was super excited to use this for was making wreaths. Because the platform comes off completely, you can turn it, and that's how it's meant to be used. You can keep turning it, which would make wreath creating super easy. The other thing I noticed is with a lot of the sticky mats that I have, they're so sticky I actually have to bend the mat in order to not warp my paper. I did not have that problem with this. My paper came right up. It wasn't warped in any way, but it still was strong enough to hold it in place. So here, I wanted to try the wreath. That's really honestly what I was most excited about. And that didn't end up being the most exciting thing, but it's what I was most excited about to start with. And so I'm going to be honest with you, I should have started with a square piece of paper. That would have made sense as I was trying to make a circle, but I didn't. I started with a regular A2 size card. So I stamped down my leaf, and then I'm turning it and I'm counting the notches. So I ended up turning it 3 times to be happy with the placement. And then I noticed that my images were going to overlap. So I did have to do a little bit of masking. For me, that's really not a big deal. And I'm sure that if I had used a smaller image or an image that was meant to be in a wreath, probably wouldn't have been a problem. But I didn't want to use a specialty stamp. I wanted to use a regular stamp and see if I could turn it into a wreath. And I did. It worked extremely well. So especially with being able to count the turns, so here I just put it back in place. I counted my 3 turns. And then at this point, once I was happy with the placement, I flipped it over. I set the platform back in the stage. I inked it up with my obsidian ink, and then I stamped it down again. I moved my masks, so on and so forth, until I got to the far left-hand side of the card when I realized that it was not going to fit. Now, I believe in adaptability, and I am not one to give up on a card when I haven't been invested in it. So did I start over? I absolutely did not start over. I found a way to make it work. I found a way to make it work because some people would say I am stubborn, but I say I am tenacious. And that sounds much more like an attribute if you ask me. So again, just moving the masks and doing the stamping. Let's talk about the video hop. So this is a part of Altenew's video hop. There is a giveaway, so make sure you like and subscribe the videos as you go along, and make sure that you are leaving a comment. They are giving away, I think it's like $200 in gift cards. They're doing like I think it's eight $25 gift cards. Don't ask me to math, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And so they will be picked and then announced over on the Altenew channel. So make sure you're doing that. All of that information will be below when you're watching on YouTube. Here is where I realized we're running into the problem. If I had cut a square piece of cardstock, I would not have ran into this problem. This is 100% user error on my part by not correctly cutting my piece of cardstock. But it's okay because nothing's perfect. Card making isn't perfect either. And I did figure out a way to make it work. And actually, of the two cards, this one ended up being my favorite. So, other things. Because it is photopolymer, I have not tried this myself. I didn't try it today, but I do intend to try it in a future video. You can use it for mirror stamping. So I've used acetate, I've used silicone mats. I've never used photopolymer for mirror stamping, but I think that that's a brilliant idea. So I am going to try that in the future. A couple of just like random tips that Altenew, and I'll link below to their video kind of covering the whole thing. But they give a couple of tips of using clear embellishments or clear enamel dots to mark your corners. And then because there's no guidelines in the base of the stage. One of the recommendations that they have is that you put down kind of like a frame for an A2 size card or whatever, the vast majority of cards you make, whatever size that is, and fill it in at the bottom. I did watch a video from Simon Hurley where he actually cut a grid, like a sticky grid mat, and put it in the bottom, so that he had a grid on there, which I thought was also brilliant. So here I was trying to figure out whether or not I needed to stamp another one, and in doing so, I ended up getting a black mark on my card base. So one of the things that I did find that was a little bit challenging for me, and again, this isn't a problem with the stamp wheel. It is just something I have to get used to. Because the platform lifts off completely, I want to treat it like an acrylic block, but I can't because it has to fit back into those areas around the bottom. So here, when I was trying to do multiple stampings, I actually had to keep, either I would have to A, move my cardstock around, or B, remove my stamp, pick it back up, and then stamp it again. Now, neither one of them is necessarily challenging or difficult. It just was like my brain was not making the connection that I could not treat it like an acrylic block. This is the other thing I was super excited for, and hands down, the thing that I love it for best is stenciling. So I was talking to one of my friends who had the stamp wheel as well. And I asked her, I said, are you using this? And she said, I use it all the time for my stenciling. And I was like, stenciling? What? So you're not going to see it in this first one because I had to mask off the edges. Not because I needed to hold the stencil in place. Turns out I totally didn't. Like hands-free stenciling. But I did need to block off the corners because my brush is so large. My ink blending brush is so large. I didn't want to get the first layer of ink on everything else that was already stamped. So that is why I use the tape. After this first layer, once I switch over to the smaller brushes, I will not be using the tape. And y'all, my goodness, it stays. You don't have to tape it down. It literally is held by the sticky mat. The stencils are held by the sticky mat, and you don't have to tape them, and they stay there. Like, they really do. They really truly stay there. And you can see I have to like force myself to lift my hand up because I'm so used to holding them in place. Not that that's wrong, but I don't have to. Oh, like, this will be the way that I stencil things from here on out. Because if you watch my channel regularly, you know I don't like the tape. I don't like it. I typically use a repositional adhesive on the back of all of my stencils so that I can avoid the tape because it's such a pain in the butt. But now I don't even have to do that. I can just stick it down to this sticky mat in the stamp wheel and it totally holds it. Like, for me, this would be enough for me to purchase it in and of itself without even the added benefit of being able to stamp and all that jazz. Like, I wouldn't even need it. I would just use it for stenciling. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the price point for the stamp wheel. First of all, as of right now, it is sold out. They started doing pre-orders way back in February, and now you can pre-order again. They are shipping in May, and this product is $100. $99.99, which is, I mean, it's a good chunk of change, like, especially for somebody who is on a craft budget. But I would say that it was worth it. It is generously sized. As you can see, it's like fills up my whole mat. It's I think the base of it is 9 by 9. And so it's pretty generously sized for whatever you would need to fit in there, large backgrounds, things like that. And again, I didn't use this with a large background, but I have seen other videos where people use them with no issue. And if you wanted to use it, like this is your stamp positioning tool that your go-to, you can use red rubber stamps. You just have to take out the base of the sticky mat. So yeah, the stenciling thing just blows my mind. It does not move. That is by far my favorite feature. And if you're somebody who stencils a lot, I imagine the tape that you go through or the adhesive that you go through is just like mind blowing. And that is completely not necessary in this, like, using this particular tool. Now, this tool might not be for everybody, and that's totally okay. Not every tool is for every crafter, but if you're a person who does a lot of stenciling, I would recommend saving up your pennies and looking into this one, because it's just for stenciling alone. I think it would be worth it. So anyway, we are going to, now that I have showed you all of the stenciling, we're going to do this last little bit in the center here, and then I'm going to show you the rest of the stenciling as well, but I'm going to speed it up because it's just the same thing over and over again. We're doing 2 cards today. I'm not going to show you the stenciling for the other card because it is exactly the same thing. So as I am filming this, as I am voicing this over, it is the wee hours of the morning here in the Taylor household. It's a late night for this girl. Just because, like, that's just where I'm at with life right now. And in the middle of that, like in the middle of my voiceover, my microphone just disappeared from the screen. It literally just disappeared. It was like, you can't voice over anymore. No recordings for you. So I had to unplug the microphone and re-plug it in and then wait for my computer to recognize it so that I could restart. It thankfully saved everything that I just said. Thank you, Jesus. But my husband tells me all the time, like, you're terrible at technology. You get frustrated. You don't know what you're doing, blah, 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 blah. And all of that might be true, but also, why does technology do that? I think my computer is just telling me, like, we've had a long day, Kelly. It's time for bed. And, it's not wrong. Sometimes it just works out like that. So Little Miss Jelly Bean if you're just following along the video hop and you're new to this channel, I have a 1.5-year-old. She, for no reason whatsoever, no hunger, no discomfort, no anything of the like. Let's talk about this real quick. So because these two leaves are different, I wanted to give them a little bit of a different tone. So I am putting the yellow as the base for this one, and then I'm going to add the same greens that we've been using right on top. But because we have the yellow as the base, it will change the tone of it just a little bit, make it a slightly different hue, which will give us a little bit of variation and make our final card more interesting. So for this one, I used yellow, and then for this long one, I am going to start with my mid-tone, which I think is actually, like forest, meadow, forest, glades. So I'm going to start with my mid-tone, and then for my darkest color, I'm actually going to use the red. So I'm going to use ruby red as my darkest color, and you may be thinking that's crazy, and it is a little bit, but the reason that it works is because red is green's complementary color. So if you need a more desaturated version of your color, you can mix it with its complement, and it will give you a darker desaturated look. So that is why I was able to use the red to shade that. And then here I am doing the wreath that we created, and I'm pretty much doing everything the same. So I'm not gonna, you can see as we went along, I just took all my lids off, left my inks to the side, and was just like, okay, I'm here for this. We're stenciling a lot of stencils. So these I did just a little bit, like I did with the regular color, and then when I did the ones that I'm gonna put on like I'm gonna die cut and put on top, I did those with the yellow base. So again, in the wreath we would have a little bit of color variation. So then I'm gonna move on to cutting them out with their coordinating dies. And off screen, it was on screen, but I wasn't recording it. I did go ahead and kind of arrange them how I wanted them to look before I moved on to the sentiments. So I'm using, it's XO, and more. It's a die set that has, I think, 5 different sentiments in it, and it has a script word, and then it has the shadow. So the script word will be cut out of white and the shadow will be cut out of black, and then I will glue them together to make them friends. I do not know how I held on to the dots of the eyes. They're just so little, but I did hold on to them, and I was able to actually put them on there. Normally I have to use just like a white gel pen or like a tiny enamel dot to fill them in because I always lose them. But this time around, I kept the little dots. Can you see them there? There's these little tiny little white specks. So once those are put together, I realized that I really wanted to put a colored card base underneath these, but I already had my flowers how I wanted them. So I taped the base down, and I'm going to use some press and seal to pick up the dies. Now nothing is adhered at this point. I'm going to pick up the arrangement exactly how I like it, and then I will remove the base from underneath it, trim that down. For this white piece, I just trimmed it to 4 by 5 1/4 so that I would have a nice little coral colored mat. And then for the other one, I trimmed it quite a bit more than that. And the reason I did is because I needed to balance one side and the other. Since my stamping went off the cardstock, I had to cut off a little bit of the wreath in the background. And so that way it would overhang and it would look like it made sense. So now at this point, I'm just going to, first of all, I'm going to make sure that leaf is good on my press and seal. And then I'm going to get my cardstock in position, and I will then tape it back down and then glue everything down, the first layer first, the second layer second, all that jazz. And this technique, I guess, I don't know what else to call it. This way of applying my dies works really well for me because I don't love messing around with the finicky bits. It just drives me insane to have to chase the die cuts around. So this really does work quite well for me when I am, putting together floral bouquets or anything that has multiple layers of dies. So do recommend the hinge method. Highly recommend the hinge method. But anyway, so my little jelly bean got up at 4 in the morning for absolutely no good reason. She was not hungry. I did not feed her. She did not have a fever. She did not have a cough or a runny nose. She needed no Tylenol or any other kinds of medication. This baby was just up, y'all. She was just up. And so we were just up from 4 until 5:30, and well, she was probably up a little longer than that because I walked out of her room at 5:50 and I knew my husband's alarm was going off at 6. So I was like, bro, I am hanging out for 10 minutes because I am not getting into bed to then have to get back out of bed. Here, what happened was I put the glue on it and then I realized I forgot to line up my cardstock. I have both pieces taped down because I know that it's going to overhang onto my card base. However, I wanted to pop up the section of white cardstock on foam, so I couldn't glue them down together, and I couldn't put the foam on the back of it first. So, because I needed it to be nice and flat. And then I'll just go in with my glue and adhere anything down that isn't already secure. From here, I am using the foam tape. I've already done the other card. Just put all the foam tape on the back of it. Here I'm doing the same thing. I just wanted to pop it up. This, you don't have to do this. It's just something that's like an added element that makes the card just a little bit more interesting. So I'm removing the protective coating on the back of that, and then I will adhere it down to this coral colored card base. Is this not so pretty? Like, this coral color is just, I'm living for it right now. So I put that down and then went ahead and just glued my sentiments down flat. They already have a little bit of dimension because it's 2 pieces of cardstock, one on top of the other. So anyway, so I was like, I'm not getting up out of bed again. Like, I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to make sure that he's up. So once he got up, he was like, you know, what's going on? And I was like, yeah, dude, she's up. And he was like, I got to get her up in like an hour to go. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I wasn't, like, she was tired and she needed to go back to sleep, so I put her back to bed. Here I'm adding some shimmer. I'm also going to add some white highlights into the centers, like on the stamen, and then I'm going to finish them off with some enamel dots. But yeah, so now my sleep is all messed up because I was up with her last night, and now so I'm up working late tonight, so who knows what's going to go on tomorrow. I'll probably just be exhausted because, you know, that just happens sometimes. Like, their sleep gets messed up, so your sleep gets messed up, and, you know, right now, the season of my life, that is the story of my life. That's the story of my life. So for these enamel dots, I chose to use white. You could definitely use colored ones and that would be super pretty, but I just put them together like they were little berries or, you know, little accents along the wreath. So that is both cards. On a whole, super, oh, here I'm fixing, I didn't like where they were, so I'm fixing it. But on a whole, the stamp wheel, super enjoyed it. Really felt like it was super useful, especially for that stenciling. That stenciling just knocks it out of the park. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Don't forget to check below for your next stop on the hop. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.